Hey everybody, welcome to Rock and Roll Shin-Soo Choo, episode number 21. My name is Gabe Estel, and I'm here with my co-hosts Jonathan Getz and Dennis Levi Leach. How you doing, guys?
Awesome.
Rock and roll.
Good deal. Glad to hear it. Well, want to dive right in here. We're a couple weeks into spring training now. Games have started. Each team has played a handful of games. And I wanted to talk to the three of you about, on your respective team, who is the player that intrigues you the most? Now, this, in most cases, probably isn't going to be maybe the biggest name that they signed in the offseason or the biggest person they acquired via trade, but somebody you're just going to be keeping your eye on all year, maybe because they've struggled recently, or there's a lot of potential that hasn't been reached. Whatever the criteria might be. Curious to hear who you guys are keeping an eye on this year. So, Levi, what about you, man? Over on the north side, who you got your eye on this year?
Well, definitely this year, I think it's going to be my number one guy would be Junior Lake. Mm-hmm. And I think it's going to be interesting to see if he can turn it around, just because he struggled last year quite a bit. And had his Bo Jackson moments, snapped some bats. You can go on YouTube and there's clips of them. And
so was it 2 years ago that he really came out of the gates swinging and hitting some home runs? Was it at the end of the season 2 years ago?
Yeah, or at the beginning of this last season.
Oh, was it the beginning? Okay.
Yeah, I think it was at the end. It was the beginning of this last season. It was like right out of the gate, right when we brought him up. It was like
Greg Jeffries.
Awesome. Yeah, and so
Kevin Moss. Yeah, right.
Well, and in the meantime, since his arrival, we have brought up Jorge Soler, and so he's almost like a carbon copy, better version of Junior Lake if you look at them together. And so it'll be interesting to see if he can make his worth felt to where they keep him and he doesn't become like trade bait, and to see what happens with him. But in a close second, I was going to say was Kyle Schwarber, just because he's starting off as a monster. His 22nd birthday was the other day, and it was also the day of his first major league spring training at bat. His first at bat, he hits a grand slam on his 22nd birthday.
Wow!
So
nice.
Yeah,
that's a guy to look forward to, but he won't be with the team at least for a year or two.
Yeah.
So
really?
I'm curious to see how quickly they bring him up, because he's a catcher, right?
Yeah, and a lot of people say he's already in the 3 or 4 games that he's shown he's got some chops, behind the plate.
Yeah, but I mean, you guys are pretty deep on catcher right now.
We are,
which is a good thing. Who doesn't want to be deep on catcher with Montero, Castillo, and so there's not really, unless maybe you have him play first base.
A lot of people
for
think
Rizzo.
He could be put to the outfield eventually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they're thinking corner infielder. So
okay. Yeah, you're right, though. I feel like he needs to kind of incubate a little bit more in the minors,
Yeah, he just turned 22.
Right. Yeah, just right out of college ball, too, so.
Yeah. What's the rule of thumb that pitchers are usually ready to go out of college, but hitters usually need to spend more time in the minors?
Mm-hmm.
Generally speaking.
Yeah. Rodon says he's ready.
Yeah.
So he said in an interview yesterday, like, he's ready.
It's like, get me on the bus.
Yeah. We'll see how that. He's not my intriguing player, but he was drafted. Schwarber was drafted right after Rodon, 3 and 4 picks, and according to Rodon, he's ready. But we'll see how that goes. I don't want to rush him. Anyway. What about in Kansas City, Jonathan?
I think actually the former number 1 overall pick of the Royals, Luke Hochevar, is a pretty interesting story this year. Luke obviously started his career with a lot of troubles as a starting pitcher, but then he switched to the bullpen, and he was super effective out of the bullpen. And people forget that coming out of spring training last year, he was Wade Davis before Wade Davis was Wade Davis, and just this shutdown setup guy. And then sure enough, he had to have Tommy John surgery, lost him for the year. And if you can imagine what that Royals bullpen would have been like last year, With
it's already awesome.
Yeah, I mean, they could have been totally content with starters consistently going 5 innings because they had somebody. They would have somebody for the 6th through 9th innings, which would have been amazing. But he had the Tommy John surgery, and so now he's coming back. And it'll if he reinforces that bullpen because they do have all the same guys in that bullpen coming back. It'll be pretty intriguing if he can get back to that status that he was at the end of 2013, and if to put that together with the rest of that bullpen would make it pretty intriguing. And furthermore, it was brought up. There's a Royals blog, Pine Tar Press, that mentioned the idea if he's really effective, possibly trying him again as a starter. He unfortunately has the dubious distinction of having one of the highest ERAs in the history of so many of starters with enough starts, and it's like 4 or 5 almost. So it's pretty awful.
Surprised the organization has stuck with him.
They really did, and a lot of people thought to a fault. But sure enough, the move to the bullpen, he was pretty dynamite in the bullpen, and so the idea of him maybe turning into a spot starter if they need him, or a number 5 starter, they signed him up for 2 more years, so it was a good move to do that, and just kind of take it as it comes and make a decision based on how he performs over the next year and a half, maybe.
Yeah. Did Collins get hurt again? I think he did, right? Yeah,
he did.
That's the little guy, right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. I don't know if it's Tommy John or not, but I think he's done for the year.
So, man, if you had him too in your bullpen,
and he was, he wasn't as critical for him last year. Not to say he wasn't effective, but he wasn't as critical. Sometimes he has some struggles with his throwing strikes. But yeah, he's a little fireballer out there, man.
Yeah. Which, to me, and I mentioned this in our last episode, to me, that just reassures me that the Royals are going to be pretty good again. I mean, if you got a bullpen that, your starters get in trouble, and it's I think Volquez is, a question mark, and Guthrie, he's mediocre, occasionally good. And then, you've got Duffy and Ventura leading it. I mean, if your bullpen gets in there, man, you guys one of the best bullpens in baseball, if not the best.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to be fine. I mean, I think people are really underestimating the Royals.
It's like you guys somehow have gone in people's eyes from like World Series contender to like sleeper team.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think the offense maybe the offense might struggle again a little bit, but the pitching's going to be there again. You lost Shields, but the bullpen's still tight, and then Ventura and Duffy are just going to come into their own even more. So
for me, the fear is the idea of a regression to the mean, and the idea that guys like Wade Davis or Greg Holland, they aren't going to be dominant forever.
It's unlikely that Wade Davis will have like a Superman. Like, what was his ERA last year? Like 1 point.
I don't even know if it was north of 1, but I mean,
he was like below 1 for a little while.
He didn't even give up an extra base hit until I think June or July.
Jesus,
that's insane. I think he's north of 30 years old by now, and so you hope he stays effective, and obviously a lot of pitchers have into their later years. But it's just it's the way the game goes. Sometimes the balls just don't bounce your way unless you're striking guys out, in which case you don't have to worry about it.
Right. Good stuff, man. Good luck. For me, on the White Sox, the guy that is the most intriguing to me is a young outfielder we have named Avisail Garcia, or Avi Garcia, as people like to call him. We got him from Detroit a couple of years ago in the 3-way trade that I think involved Peavy to Boston as well. I don't remember all the pieces to that, but he played a little bit for Detroit in the outfield, and he's very athletic, still young. I think he's still only 22 or 23, and he was hurt most of last year. He got a few at bats with the White Sox in late 2013. Got hurt about the first 2 weeks into the season last year, and then came back around late August, and was kind of inconsistent. But that's to be expected after you miss most of the season and you're such a young player. So I've got my eyes on him. I think if all the tools are there to sort of be the complete package, he can play great defense. He's got speed. He can hit. He's got a little bit of pop to him. So if he can put it together, he's going to be the guy that's going to be the most intriguing for me. Hopefully anchoring a good young outfield for us with him, Eaton, and then bringing in Melky Cabrera, who would be the veteran presence. I'm excited about our outfield. What's that?
What would be a stat line for him that you would be pretty stoked about by the end of the year?
If he hit like 275, I would like to see that. Maybe 15 homers. 70 RBIs. Yeah. I think that would be fine, for where he's at right now.
Did you say if he has speed?
He has. I think he's got some speed. Yeah. His. I'd have to look up the numbers. I don't have them in front of me, but he's quick. Yeah, he's like. We put him in the 2 slot last year, but I think Cabrera is going to be there this year. So he's been pushed down the order. He's probably gonna, I don't know. My guess is he'll probably hit like 7th or 8th, but yeah. So he's number 1 on my watch list because he kind of, I think this year and next year are his years where he really needs to prove it, or they might head in another direction.
Sure.
So all right, so lots of players to watch. A little music news. I want to move to that. Levi posted a link among us, and we'll share it on our page too, about this Hollywood Vampires project, which the Hollywood Vampires are the famous drinking group of Harry Nilsson, Alice Cooper, Keith Moon, John Lennon, Mickey Dolenz, that drank in L.A. in the 70s, and it turns out they're sort of resurrected the super group, or they've kind of resurrected the group. Now all of them geriatric and sober for the most part, I think.
Yeah, Alice Cooper, he doesn't drink, right?
No, he quit drinking in the mid 80s.
Okay.
Because he was pretty bad there.
Yeah, they were like, your liver is going to explode.
Yeah, he was in really bad shape prior to getting sober. So yeah, he got sober in early to mid 80s and has been sober ever since. But he had pretty much Conan the Barbarian drinking powers in the 70s.
He quit drinking and found golf.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So Levi posted this link that Alice Cooper and Joe Perry and also Johnny Depp is involved. Johnny Depp plays a little guitar. And also Paul McCartney is involved as well. These guys are going to be they're recording a record, right, Levi? It says.
Yeah, I mean that's what it says. Yeah, and they somehow got Paul to sing if you want it, here it is, come and get it. Badfinger, the song he wrote for Badfinger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that should be interesting, and they're going to tour as well. I doubt with McCartney. I don't see McCartney probably going on the road.
No. I could see where they would do a maybe a private, or not a private LA gig, but a surprise LA gig.
Yeah,
where he would do that.
Something at the Whiskey or Viper Room or something like that. Yeah. I could see him showing up at something like that. I mean, if he toured with them, they go from playing probably theaters to arenas.
For sure.
If you add him on the bill,
for sure.
But it'd be interesting to see. It sounds like fun. It sounds like a bunch of dudes who I like having fun.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, I think the idea generally of supergroups is fun, and I don't think you can't be too critical of it,
right?
Because that it's not gonna be a fine record by any means, and they aren't gonna get really involved in the production of the album or anything. They're just gonna do the spur of the moment sort of thing, and just try to keep the energy and go out and do it. And I think in the history of supergroups, I think that's the right way to do it.
Especially where all of those guys are in their career right now. I mean, they're all I mean, aside from Johnny Depp at probably 50 is the, is the child of the group,
right.
Yeah, so going all the way up to, what's McCarthy, 72, 73, something like that. And,
yeah.
Yeah, Perry's Joe Perry's got to be, in his early 60s now, and Cooper's, I think, in his late 60s. So.
And so they said that they were, was the idea that they would be also doing songs from each of the members' repertoires?
I don't know.
They only mentioned that one Badfinger song that McCartney wrote.
But apparently, he never sings. Yeah.
I don't know if they're going to do covers or originals. Probably a little bit of both is my guess.
Yeah.
Well, and Levi posted that, and I remember that got me thinking about this group called Kings of Chaos. Have you guys heard about, it's like a rotating cast of players? Kings of Chaos is they've played off and on for the last 3 years. And kind of the permanent members, or sort of the permanent pieces of the group, are some ex-Guns N' Roses members. It's Duff McKagan, Gilby Clarke, Matt Sorum, and then the other kind of permanent fixtures have been Steve Stevens, who's Billy Idol's guitarist, and then Robin Zander of Cheap Trick.
Wow.
And Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top has played with them as well. And I'm just going to read off just briefly some of the names that have played with them since April 2012. And they've played a lot in South America, as well as some shows in South Africa. So I don't know. I'm curious to know kind of what the motivation behind this is. Because it seems like this would be something that they would do, like Jonathan mentioned a minute ago, just kind of everybody, all those people probably live near LA. They would get together on a Sunday night at the Whiskey or the Viper Room or the Roxy or something, and just kind of jam, or maybe do something for charity, something like that. These are all people who have certainly made a good living playing music, but they've toured a little bit too. So I don't know if this is something they would do for a long tour. Probably not because of their schedules, but I'll just read a few of the people who also have been involved over the last 3 years. Joe Elliott, Def Leppard, Gene Simmons, Mike Inez from Alice in Chains, Sebastian Bach, Glenn Hughes from Deep Purple. A few others here. Brian May of Queen.
Wow.
Sammy Hagar. And that's about it for the most parts. Joe Elliott, like I said, from Def Leppard, has shown up a few times, and so has Billy Gibbons as well. But yeah, the three guys from Guns N' Roses,
that's pretty cool,
and Robin Zander and Steve Stevens have been kind of the permanent fixtures.
Yeah.
So pretty cool. Neat. Yeah. If I saw those guys playing down the street, I would get excited. So anyway, so those are kind of they're kind of the geriatric supergroups of right now. That seems to be sort of a part-time thing, but nonetheless, it sounds like a lot of fun. And we'll post links to about these groups on the webpage as well. Last thing here in the leadoff session, today is International Women's Day. So we want to salute all of the female rockers out there, and there's some women are making some really great they have for a long time and are making some really great music right now as well. So I just wanted to get our take on some of the female performers that we're digging on right now, or maybe we've dug on in the past. Levi, what about you? What female artist do you think right now really?
I think Susan
catches your attention. Yeah.
is hitting it out of the park with Tedeschi Trucks Band, and I just love their sound and their vibe.
It's a big sound.
Yeah, and I seem to always like bands where there's like 15 people on stage,
right?
Just because usually everybody's smiling and having a good time, and that permeates to the audience. So Susan Tedeschi right now, she's definitely got my vote.
Cool.
Right on.
Good deal. Jonathan, What about you, man?
Well, old, new, I go through phases where I probably listen to more female vocalists and or songwriters than I do male. And a lot of that has to do with music that comes out of South America, the Tropicalia movement, or the more contemporary post-Tropicalia movement. Rita Lee was a 70s singer that came out of Os Mutantes and put out some phenomenal work in the 70s. And nowadays I listen to Barbara Eugenia, and I may be butchering her name, and also another female singer-songwriter, Malu, are awesome, great songwriters, and really some of the structures of the songs, especially Barbara Eugenia, is awesome guitars and great production. The guitars that come out of South America sound really unique, and the world's much better for it. And also today, Gosling is a great singer-songwriter out of Australia. I talk a lot about the Doe on here, from Europe, France specifically. And yeah, I mean, I don't think twice about it anymore. Sometimes it can be an exception to the rule where you're like, oh yeah, it's a female singer, I forgot. And now it's just, it's almost a surprise when it isn't.
Well, that's a good thing,
yeah.
you know? I mean,
definitely.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. It's forever indebted to the female rocker.
Absolutely. Yeah, for me, you know, obviously the veteran names are well established, and those are usually the first ones to come to mind. Your Heart, Your Runaways, an act that I don't think they play anymore, but I was a big Donna's fan, and I wish I would have been able to see them. I don't think they're active anymore.
Right.
I don't think so either.
But I think Turn 21 is one of my is really one of my go-to records. I still listen to it quite a bit. Came out from 2001. And of newer acts, I caught this band opening for The Cult when I saw The Cult last August. There was a band, I got there probably during their second or third tune, and they're called Electric Citizen. They're from the Cincinnati area, and female vocalist, and her husband is the guitarist. And it's like, I would describe it as sort of as like Ann Wilson fronting Black Sabbath. That's kind of the sound that they have.
Right on.
It's definitely a Sabbath sound. You know, it's got a little bit of sludge to it, but her vocals are really, you know, she can really kind of give off a banshee cry sometimes. So I highly recommend them. Yeah, they're called Electric Citizen. Really good stuff. They haven't been together that long. They've only been together for about a year or two. So already getting a little bit of buzz in their area, and then you know, they opened for The Cult as well.
Oh.
And then for me, I mentioned her when we did a recap of the best albums of last year. I really like Lana Del Rey a lot.
Oh, right. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, you know, she put out one of the best records of last year, and I think probably one of the most mature leaps from her first record to her second record. So she's got me really excited about what she's going to do next.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I look
she's
forward to
phenomenal.
that.
Yeah, and actually that reminded me.
So good.
Janelle Monáe is.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Dude,
Levi, have you heard her? Have you heard Janelle Monáe?
To watch her.
It's crazy.
It's trippy, man. Yeah, it's like God. I would kill to her go back in time and have her play with Parliament or something. You know, would just be the shit.
And she's got great. Such a stage presence too. If you got to look them up I'll post a video on the website, but her act, and it's not just an act. I mean, she's a phenomenal singer and songwriter.
Yeah,
but her stage presence is quite energetic.
Absolutely, good stuff. Yeah, good stuff out there. So we certainly salute all those artists and look forward to what they're going to do next. Let's get right into the heart of the order now. We are going to talk about overpaid players and overproduced records. So when the team or the band lays it on a little too thick, and either maybe they overpay or they overthink or they overproduce. So we're here to talk about that. We'll talk about some baseball players as well as some albums that we think got the too much production. So I want to go. We'll go to baseball because you know baseball is probably, I would say, of the four major sports, the one that people generally associate with terrible contracts. And baseball's guaranteed money, unlike some of the other sports where, it's not guaranteed, or just a chunk of it is guaranteed. So in baseball, you sign that contract, you're getting that cash. To me, the sort of the first guy that comes to mind, you could call him sort of the Pluto Nash, if you will. That's a movie that, if you haven't seen, it's one of the biggest box office flops of all time. Really, one of the many blemishes on Eddie Murphy's recent track record. Anyway, the Pluto Nash of baseball would be Mike Hampton. Mike Hampton, if you guys remember, was a starting pitcher who in 1999, when he was with the Astros, put together a 22-win season. He was 22-4, which is a hell of a season. So you put up a season like that, you're going to get rewarded with a lucrative contract. And he had just been in Houston a few years at that point, so he hadn't. He was certainly on the rise, but he definitely broke out that year in '99 and won 22 games. So 22-4. He All-Star, second place Cy Young. Got MVP votes that year, and then he gets traded to the Mets the following year, and then the year after that he signs a very lucrative deal with the Colorado Rockies, which. Anytime you sign a big name pitcher in Colorado, that park, home runs, balls just fly out of that park. So, any pitcher could really ruin his game if he goes to Colorado. So they gave him just a shitload of money in Colorado. It was, at the time it was signed in 2000, it was the largest contract in sports history.
Wow.
Mike Hampton.
Crazy.
15 years ago, the largest contract in sports history.
That is crazy.
Yeah. Joe Montana, Michael Jordan, LeBron. LeBron wasn't playing then, but all of these athletes that prior to 2000.
Wow.
No, Mike Hampton gets the largest contract. And so his first year, he goes 14-13 with an ERA over 5. All right, so. Yeah, not that great, but I don't think there was much of a team in Colorado at that point. Yeah. And then 2 years later, he's traded to the Marlins, and then he goes to the Braves. And in the Braves, I'll bring up his numbers here. Best year he had with the Braves was 2003, when he went 14-8. And then the next year he went 13-9. But during those years, his ERA climbed, and he didn't even play in 2006 and 2007.
Yeah.
Wow.
So mind you guys, 2 years, and that's in the middle of the deal,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So 2 years, 2006, bringing up his salary info here.
Yeah, in 2005, 15 million. 2008, 15 million.
Yeah. 2006, 2007, he doesn't play. He gets $14.5 million for not throwing a pitch.
Right.
Yeah.
Because he was injured, right?
Because he was injured. And he was injured, yeah.
Yeah.
So, big deal, he was getting paid over $15 million all the way up until 2008. And by that point, he wasn't effective. So he goes, he rounded out his career in Houston, tried to make a stab in Arizona, didn't make the team, and then kind of quietly retired about 4 years ago. So I would say that Mike Hampton is probably the shittiest contract of all time in baseball.
Now, I will defend Mike Hampton in one fashion.
Okay.
And that is in 2001, for the Rockies, he hit 7 home runs.
Yes, he could hit. The dude hit 290.
Yeah.
So
maybe, 7 home
that
runs
makes up a little bit for
7 home runs and 86 at bats. Yeah. So if you extrapolate that out to
why didn't he just go be a DH?
Right. He could have hit 35, 45 home runs.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so he could hit. Yeah, the dude won a couple Silver Slugger awards.
Yep. 4 in a row.
4 Silver Slugger awards. So more known as a hitter than a
5 in
pitcher.
Yeah.
5 in a row.
Yeah.
Okay, so the dude could hit. Yeah, he was a Zambrano type.
I think he was the first pitcher to win the Gold Glove and the Silver Slugger in the same year.
All right, you're making him sound good now.
He was worth at least $6 million.
Money.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But I mean, $30 million and you don't even pitch for 2 years.
Yeah,
And granted,
tough.
he was injured,
Yeah.
but yeah.
tough.
So he comes to mind first. A couple other names I'll throw out there. You know, if Mike Hampton is the Pluto Nash of the baseball contract world, I think Barry Zito is at least the water world, and then maybe you got Kevin Brown as the Godfather Part 3. If we're going with movie analogies. You guys, what else do you guys got? I mean, who are the overpaid guys that come to your mind? I mean, I mentioned those 3 pitchers, which I think within our lifetimes are probably some of the worst contracts.
I mean, as a Cubs fan, I am just gifted with a large amount to choose from. Like, it's a never-ending pool, Olympic size. And so we'll talk pitchers, and the first ones that all came to my mind were LaTroy Hawkins. we gave that chump 3 years and $11 million, and he never did anything. And pitcher named Dave Smith, who this was at the time of this would have been, I guess it would have been late 80s, early 90s. I don't know the year, but we gave him $4.9 million for 2 years.
Which is high for back then.
It was more than what Mark Grace and Ryan Sandberg were making.
Jeez.
And you've never heard of the guy.
Yeah.
And then after that was Danny Jackson. That was one of the worst Cubs pickups ever.
Yeah.
Just for the fact that, like, he had been awesome and he came to the Cubs and just sucked. We gave him We gave him $2.6 million for 2 years in a row, so almost $5 million.
Yeah.
And he was 1-5, and then got injured and was out.
Yeah, he was pretty good when he was with the Reds. That
was right when we picked him up. Was like at the peak of his being good on the Reds. We got him, and he was awful.
Right.
And currently we have Edwin Jackson, so that's one that we have that's still on the team. We gave Edwin Jackson $52 million for 4 years.
Yikes!
Which is awful.
Yeah. Anybody that's played for 9 different teams is usually never a good sign. And
Edwin you pull
Jackson's
up Baseball Reference and it's like jersey,
the circle's just all the way across the screen.
Jersey. Yes. It's like, that's not a pattern. That's really how many jerseys.
Oh man, guys like a Phil Necro or something.
What about Alfonso?
Oh yeah, position players. Yeah, so you've got Alfonso's probably. He gets a lot of the worst. People say that's the worst, but you got to remember we had Nomar, we had Jeff Blauser. We picked him up when he was supposed to be great,
from the Braves.
Ended up being awful. Todd Hundley. Todd Hundley was supposed to be great, and he came to us and was awful. And then Fukudome. We gave Fukudome a ton of money, and he was awful.
Dude, nobody dominated April like Fukudome.
If you could just replicate that throughout the rest of his every other month.
He had the pitchers fooled the first month of the season with the swing.
Yeah, I mean, Levi, prior to Epstein arriving, I mean, a few years ago, what was holding you guys back was you were saddled with Soriano, Zambrano, and Ramirez all at the same time.
Same time, yeah.
I mean, those were just 3 albatross across your neck,
Oh yeah.
Ramirez, strangely, has really produced well in Milwaukee.
Did he retire?
No, he's still playing.
This is his last year.
This is his last year.
And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's going to be awkward? Because obviously he's no Derek Jeter, and he's not going to get farewells at every stadium.
No, I don't think so.
Do you think though that there's an awkward moment where teams are like, do we honor Aramis?
Like he's like just enough to kind of maybe get it, but like he's not so big that he should.
Yeah,
Right.
All the PR people that like work in like Cincinnati and stuff are like, what do we do? You know, right?
Yeah. You just maybe give him a cake in the clubhouse. That's it.
Right.
That's it. Nothing on the field.
Gift certificate to Ruth's Chris in Cincinnati or something.
Like,
you know, right?
In Pittsburgh, it'll be half off hot dogs the night they come to town.
I see what you did there.
The guy lost so much weight when he went to Milwaukee. You know,
he did.
Must have avoided the sausage and beer in Milwaukee. I don't know.
Yeah.
But you guys were saddled with some bad contracts just a few years ago.
Yeah. And I will say that is one thing Epstein and Hoyer and those guys have done. They have gotten rid of the bad contracts.
Well, for your
Most
sake,
of
brother, I hope. I mean, like obviously you're entering into a very large contract right now.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah.
I listen.
Lester.
I hope it pans out. The
Yeah.
track record, knock on wood, shows me that it will. I mean, just based on how many innings he's pitched. I mean, the guy overcame cancer.
Oh yeah. Well yeah. And,
you know, I mean,
and in the short amount of time he pitched this spring, so far he's been
right.
It was like he was in mid-season form.
Well, and I think you went into the deal knowing that he's probably not going to have 7 phenomenal years. If he has 5, it's money well spent.
It's worth it, yeah.
Yeah, you know, if he has 4, it might be money well spent. You know,
oh yeah.
I mean, if you guys reach
if
the World
somehow
Series,
the
it's
Cubs win a
definitely
World
money well
Series,
spent.
it was money well spent.
Yeah, no one will care if you guys win the World Series.
Really, I when I was studying these contracts on Baseball Reference, it was interesting to see that a lot of these big contracts got unloaded with 2 years left on them, where they shipped the guy off to somebody like the Angels, who are like, yeah, we'll take Vernon Wells.
Angels and the Yankees are not afraid to waste money.
Right. And so I think that's
Dodgers.
the mindset of these teams when they're signing these 7-year, $100 million deals is, the last 2 or 3 years are going to be somebody else's problem.
Yeah.
And unless it's just something that you really can't ship. And wasn't that the issue with Soriano? They just couldn't find any takers for Soriano.
Yeah. Nobody
the Yankees
take
yeah.
all the money.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I've got the top 10. I've got the 2015 highest salaries now. And good God, a lot of people make over $20 million now. We're looking at like over 30 players that make $20 million or more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is just crazy.
Oh, yeah.
But right now, I would say that the guy who makes the most money, and when I say deserves it, first of all, nobody deserves the amount.
It's all relative.
It's all relative. So let's keep that in mind. But Clayton Kershaw makes $32 million a year, and if there's anybody who deserves it, it's that guy. I mean, because at least like right now, the best player is the highest paid player.
Yeah, in the regular season.
In the regular season, yeah.
And I'm a big Clayton Kershaw fan, so I know he's got some postseason
he hasn't
haters
figured out that
for
playoff
sure.
thing yet.
Yeah,
but there's some bad ones in the top 10. I mean, Ryan Howard is set to make $25 million this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cliff Lee.
Wow. He just got hurt.
Yeah. Is set to make $25 million.
Yeah.
Wow.
Trying to look at some other ones. Pujols. $24 million.
And he was solid. He was solid last year.
He was solid, but there's still 7 years left on that deal.
Yeah, it's an awful contract. It's a
terrible contract.
The Cardinals were so smart to let him go.
Oh yeah,
they got their series, they got their titles out of him, and they got their best years, his best years out of him.
Yep.
Another bad one, Sabathia at $23 million.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
He's
past
his prime.
Yeah.
Joe Mauer, $23 million. Yeah, I know the average can still be there, but he didn't produce like he should have after he signed this.
Well, and now that he's, I don't know how often he's playing at first base, but I know a lot since he's had those concussions or other injuries. Maybe I might be thinking of more now. But now, if you're playing first, your numbers are expected to be better when you're at first versus if you're a catcher batting 310, 320, 330, winning batting titles with 9 home runs and 70, 80 RBI. That's cool. That's not good for a first baseman.
Yeah, no, absolutely not.
Jason Worth is on that list. He's going to make $21 million. It says.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'll give him this. He turned it around. I mean, he looked terrible those first 2 years in Washington.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But the dude's turned it around, particularly for his age. Was he like 37, something like that?
Is he really?
Wow. No, he's. I want to say only 2 or 3 years older than me, and maybe he is 37. Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, because he got that late start.
Yeah.
Getting into the majors. So.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think there's only a couple years left on that deal.
Yeah.
Right.
2017. Yep.
Okay. Well, I mean, granted, he could be awesome again this year, or he could completely fall apart.
35. It says
he's 35. Yeah. So for a guy that's playing in the outfield every day, I'll just kind of go down the list. Carl Crawford, terrible contract.
Yep.
I think still quite a few years left on that deal as well. Jesus Christ.
2017.
Okay. I was thinking of somebody else. C.J. Wilson, bad contract.
Yep. Angels. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you guys think the Scherzer deal could turn out to be bad?
Yeah. I mean, he's what, 30?
Yeah, he's 31, I think.
So, you're hoping for a few more dynamite years after that. It's not going to be good.
I mean,
on the excellent.
On the White Sox right now, really, we only have one bad contract, and I'd say that's John Danks at close to $16 million a year.
Yeah.
For a guy who might be our number 5 starter this year,
yeah.
Our highest paid player might be number 5 in the rotation.
Wow.
And the Cubs, it's all too soon. Lester, obviously, it's a big investment, but it could pan out. And the Royals, are never really major players in the free agent market, so
right.
They haven't really had the chance to reward a lot of bad contracts.
We're still gun shy since we snagged Jose Guillen,
right?
For a lot of money.
Yeah,
He was he earned $12 million a year here for a few years, and he hit about maybe 30 home runs during that time. Over all that time.
Josh Hamilton, recent struggles. I like the guy, but he's third highest paid player at $25.4 million this year.
Yeah.
For a guy that certainly hasn't produced like people thought he would in Anaheim. I don't know, if looking down the list, to me Pujols is the worst contract just due to the amount of years that are left. Even though he did start to turn it around a little bit last year. To me, that's the worst contract, just because you got 7 years of that guy still.
If you had so going through these top total contracts that are active, you got Giancarlo Stanton #1, A-Rod, forget about him, #2.
Giancarlo Stanton's going to be good for about 9 more years, though.
Yeah, you hope so. I mean, unless he takes another one to the noggin.
Yeah, right.
$325 million. So if you
could
pick,
it's stupid money, but he's pretty awesome.
So if you could choose between Stanton, Miguel Cabrera's #4, we'll skip Pujols. Robinson Cano is right there with Pujols, or Kershaw. It goes. Yeah, it's Stanton, Cabrera, Cano, Votto, and Kershaw. Who would you take and who would you not take?
That's tough.
It is.
I mean, my gut says take Kershaw, but then right away I want to say Cano too, because I've always liked his consistency.
Yeah, he is.
I remember it was like MVP 2005 or whatever. I would put Cano, I would trade him to the Cubs just because I liked him that much.
Seems like he's been in the league forever.
Right.
And I think he's only 31, 32.
Yeah.
Didn't he replace Soriano at second base after Soriano's first stint with the Yankees?
Yeah.
And when Soriano got traded for A-Rod.
Yeah, right.
So the Rangers, Cano took Soriano's place at second.
Yeah, around I don't know, 04, something like that, maybe 03. Yeah. Levi, I would be hesitant. I like Cano too. I would be hesitant to choose Cano just based on the number of years that are
Yeah,
left.
yeah.
You know what I mean? There's like, if you include this upcoming season, you're looking at paying the guy for 9 years.
Yeah.
And he's already 31, 32.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, second baseman as well. You know, second baseman's got to break down sometime in his mid-30s, you know. I could be wrong. You know, for me, it's Kershaw just because he's so dominant, you know. I mean, even if the playoff thing's not there, my close second would be Stanton.
Yeah.
Just due to his age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. So, good stuff, guys. You know, the White Sox, before I wrap it up here and we move on to talking about some music, really, I'd say the riskiest thing the White Sox did maybe in the offseason wasn't even that risky, and they signed a reliever to a lucrative 4-year contract, David Robertson.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's always risky to pay. I think, you know, he's going to get about $12 million a year, I think. You know, that's, unless you're, you know, Dennis Eckersley or Mariano Rivera, that can be risky. And he only had 1 year as a full-time closer under his belt. But I don't know. It's still only 4 years. You know, it's nothing like some of these just ridiculous 10-year deals like we just talked about. So.
No, yeah, not. And you say he's going to be a middle reliever or a closer?
He's our closer.
Yeah,
okay. He's our closer. Yeah, I mean, he saved 40 games last year in the Yankees, so
yeah.
Or just about 40 games. So if we can get him out there, I'm sure he'll be fine.
Yeah.
So anyway, moving on though, let's talk about production values for albums.
Overpaying for albums.
Yes, overpaying for albums, right? Maybe overthinking, overpaying, overproduced work. I've got 2 things I want to talk about. I'm going to give one example, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about reconsidering some overproduction. But Levi, can we start with you, man? What if we look at what are some acts that you like, but maybe they thought too much about a record, or maybe put too much production?
I mean,
wait, should we establish a definition of what it means to overproduce?
I guess so. Yeah.
Album?
What would you?
Yeah, I think some of it, first of all, just has to do with time investment.
Yeah.
It can drag on forever. Secondly, just, balls to the wall noise, and not in like a punk way.
Right.
And then, really, obviously auto-tune, vocals.
Sure.
Those are a few of the aspects for me.
So something that's maybe too busy, right, for the adjective I'd use. Or maybe, while certainly layered is a term that, people use to describe albums quite a bit.
Yeah.
I guess maybe having too many layers, And
I think like Let It Be could be an example of that, because then they released the naked.
They released the naked one.
Well, the first one that I was going to say was the Pearl Jam they just redid with the Pearl Jam 10, where they re-released it with the Brendan O'Brien, the Redux mix.
Yep.
I just got that, and so I was just comparing that. And I kind of like the overproduced version a little better.
Do you?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know if it is just because I've heard those songs that way so many times that the little bit more stripped down versions, I enjoyed hearing them, but to me that album will always be that produced sound.
Yeah.
And especially with the vocals, that was, when I put that on the Brendan O'Brien mix, I was like, well, it's so rare when you can actually hear a remix. So I just kind of put it on in the background and start listening, and right away.
Yeah.
It's because those vocals don't have nearly as much reverb as they did in the original version, in the 91 version. And it's jarring. Like you said, Levi, it's, you hear those previous, the original version thousands of times. It can be jarring.
Yeah, so I'm definitely going to have to go back and listen to it more and more to try and get used to it, but and to make a better opinion of it. I would have liked to maybe seen some Guns N' Roses not produce so much. And I think it would have maybe helped with them like getting records out to the market sooner as well.
Yeah, they only took about 15 years to release one of them.
Because
a lot of illusions are a lot of people. A lot of people say the Use Your Illusions are overproduced.
Yeah, there's a ton of things going on. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like definitely Axl's moment where Elton John was like his biggest influence. You know, there's so much piano on that on those two records.
Well, no, he's the king of modern day tracks. All new artists are like tracks. I need tracks. We gotta have tracks. There's got to be so many tracks in the background.
Yeah, and Pro Tools it accommodates as many as you need.
And so he was like the godfather of tracks.
Yeah, that's funny. The godfather of tracks.
Well, and that's how it is. Like in my line of work as a stagehand, we'll do shows, and it's like, you know, it'll be a 3 or 4 piece band, but they got 50 tracks going, you know, during the whole show that they're playing along with, that the drummer triggers, and it's like, you know.
So, from your perspective, how is that? Why is it more enjoyable to have fewer tracks when you're getting that set up?
I don't know. I think it just leads. It makes stuff too busy. I think sometimes, like certain songs, I think just to get to a heart of a song, you've got to strip away some of the layers. Yeah. And if you have just piles of stuff on top of it, just because I like sleigh bells, like anybody likes sleigh bells, but do they need to be on your song along with like the cello and all this other stuff? And does it all need to be layered in reverb? With, like delays and choruses.
On the contrary, you look at like Floyd's albums, which have a lot of production and perks.
There's a time and a place for it. Yeah, like Def Leppard Hysteria is they wasted years producing that record, but I still think it still sounds good. I mean, it sounds overproduced. Record.
Mutt Lang, they got one of the big guns in Mutt Lang. Your Mutt Langs, your Bop Rocks. You know, those are the guys that are like,
do you want to fucking sell 40 million records or not?
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah, Mutt Lang is like the guy that are like, it's not working. Come on, get down here, Mutt, right now. Yeah, you know, it's interesting that you brought up Guns N' Roses, and Jonathan and I were talking earlier, and he mentioned Chinese Democracy. One of the albums that, and I won't belabor this point because we could talk about Chinese Democracy all night. It's almost impossible to say whether that album whether it was a success. You know, I mean, it sales wise it wasn't, but shit, from the time he started recording it in 1993, 1994, I mean, the music industry had completely changed by the time it was finally released in the fall of 2008. Right. So, like, just the barometer, the gauge for success, there's no way it could have been.
Yeah. He started it when there was gangster rap, and he finished it when there was EDM.
Yeah, right. Yes, exactly.
and in the meantime, all of the digital recording movement came and probably accommodated him in a way that he wasn't being accommodated in the early 90s.
Right. If you guys ever get a chance, the New York Times, about a year or so before that album came out, when it was still sort of, in limbo, if it was going to come out, they've got an article called "The Most Expensive Album Never Made." That's really an entertaining read. It just like he brought in so many people too. Like Moby was involved for a little while with Chinese Democracy. Zakk Wylde.
I would love to hear. He needs to release like an outtakes. There's got to be just like tapes.
94 version, 95 version, 96 version.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many different guitar. I mean, like all the people that he's got playing with him now at some point played on it. It was just pretty crazy.
And now that I think about it, he could be comparable to Neil Young in that sense, because Neil was somebody who refused to transfer some of his albums. It was called, I think, The Missing Six. Some of his albums from the 70s, he refused to transfer to CD, because he never liked the quality of the sound.
On the beach.
Right. Yeah, on the beach, Reactor. So
Reactor.
And so
Hawks and Doves, right?
Yep,
as well.
Hawks and Doves. And so but when the technology got to a point where, like with Blu-ray audio, it accommodated greater fidelity, and incidentally, he finally released them on CD, but he also really latched onto the Blu-ray, and Blu-ray audio is phenomenal, even if you're just watching a movie. And so it's like finally the technology caught up, and maybe Axl could make that argument as well, that the technology didn't catch up until after the year 2000, and he would have a legitimate argument there.
Yeah.
To wrap up the point about Chinese democracy, I find it to be an interesting piece of music. Now, if dare I say good, I don't know, but I bought it, when it came out, and I listen to it still occasionally. Just because it's a story, you know what I mean? Like whole thing, that just the start to finish thing is just it's crazy. Maybe music.
It's the Beach Boys with Smile.
So that's probably one of the most overproduced records of all time, Chinese Democracy, just in terms of years and personnel and money. God,
Mm-hmm.
The one that comes to mind that a band that all of us love. This was bound to come up. By Your Side is terribly produced.
The Black Crowes By Your Side, yes.
Yes. Awful.
Even if it has a handful of good songs on it, which it does have a small handful of good songs, the production value is on it. He'll never listen to this podcast probably, but Kevin Shirley, if you're listening to it, thank you for allowing my favorite band to put out a terrible album.
Yeah. Bad.
The album, the production values on it, they made it sound like a late 90s Aerosmith record is what it sounds like.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
And he worked with Aerosmith too, so yeah. So to me, that's like that's the one like nearest to my heart in terms of overproduction.
Yeah.
Because I've never really had a problem with any of Pearl Jam's production. I mean, it just it's been different, but it's still been consistent. So, but By Your Side is the one that really broke my heart in terms of production.
I was thinking about this from a different angle as well, and the idea of some bands, whether it be like War on Drugs or Belle and Sebastian, they come out and they have a really kind of lo-fi production value. So the opposite of being overproduced is this lo-fi, a lot fewer tracks, a lot fewer effects, and a lot less budget. And I think there are some people who say, with some of the indie bands, they say, I love the first two albums, and then it just kind of got too polished after that. And I think that there's a difference, though, between going lo-fi and then just having more of a budget to make it sound like you want it to sound like. Because the War on Drugs is a case in point. They're getting a lot of recognition, so I won't claim that they aren't. But in their last two records, the production value is phenomenal and kind of gave them the sound that they didn't otherwise have on the first on Wagon Wheel Blues, and so there's a lot to be said for actually having a bit more time and money. And I don't know how much more they may have had, but it's obvious that there is something to be said for devoting a bit more time to it and putting out a record that really fulfills your vision and knowing what your vision is. And maybe Axl, in his case, he didn't really know what his vision quite was.
Probably not.
But I have no idea, obviously. And so the same with Belle and Sebastian, where, indie darlings, totally lo-fi, the first few albums, and then, their last record is almost like ABBA at times. But it's great. I mean, I really enjoy it because I feel like it fulfills their vision that was pretty distinct.
Well, I think what you're describing is there's evolving and then there's overproduction.
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean?
It can be a fine line.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's like it can be a good thing too. I mean, it's like a filmmaker. You're like an independent filmmaker, and you finally get some money, and you can make the movie you want to make. Finally, because you've got more resources at your disposal. You can go shoot that scene in that area you couldn't access earlier, or do things in post-production that you couldn't do,
Right.
with the budget you used to have. So good stuff, guys. All right. Well, we'll continue this discussion online about overproduction. You can check out our website, rockchew.com, or you can follow us on Twitter at rockinchew, also on Instagram at the same handle, rockinchew, or like us on Facebook, and we can talk about all these things there. So what we want to do now is we get to the portion of the evening where we wrap things up and we talk about some new music we've been listening to, or it could be old music, but maybe it's new to our ears, something that sort of tickled our fancies lately. So I'm going to go ahead.
I've got one I think that parlays perfectly into our talk about production.
Let it rip, man.
And I just picked it up this week, and it's Mark Ronson's new record. It's called Uptown Special.
Nice.
And he's got Stevie Wonder on here, Bruno Mars, a bunch of different other vocalists, and part of it has a little bit of Steely Dan type of production to some of the songs. Some of it has Prince, Morris Day and the Time type of production to the songs. Obviously, there's Stevie Wonder type production to the song. That there's actually 2 songs, I believe, that he is on. And I got recommended.
Stevie Wonder plays on it?
Yeah.
Oh, kick-ass.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so I'd gotten recommended this album by somebody, and they were like, listen to the Uptown Funk song with Bruno Mars. So I did, and I was like, yeah, it's pretty cool. And they were like, well, the rest of the album is supposed to be good as well. And when they said it, part of it was produced with Steely Dan qualities, I was like, well, I'll give it a shot. And so I'm pleasantly surprised. It's really good. I would recommend it. The Stevie Wonder song is the first one on the album, called Uptown's First Finale. The Uptown Funk song with Bruno Mars is all over the radio. You can't miss it. There's a song on here called In Case of Fire that I don't even know how to explain. It's got almost like a glam sound, maybe. David Bowie. Yeah, it's cool. The record's all over the place. So yeah, check it out.
Yeah, I've got it in my queue. It's going to make its way up the list. Yeah, man. It's getting a lot of buzz, certainly, as well. So good selection. So yeah, Mark Ronson.
I guess right now it is on limited edition clear yellow vinyl.
Ooh,
so
nice. That's pretty.
Yeah, pick it up while it's out, and I think in a month or 2, maybe April, it'll be on regular black vinyl then.
Is that clear yellow looks like made by Rollerblade Company?
Right? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So mine, and harking back to International Women's Day, is a duo, I believe, from New York. Released a couple albums called Colts.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's good.
This album's from 2013. This album's called Static. It's a guy and a girl, and they it's rock and roll. Lo-fi produced, but great production, and more of a 50s, 60s songwriting style to it all, to the songs. And their first album I've had in my car. I have 2 blown speakers in my car, and so not a lot sounds good in that.
Yeah, right.
And so I've had their first record in my car since October because it sounds good in there, and just playing over and over again, and I don't get tired of it. So check out Colts.
Cool. Yeah, good stuff, man. I've that record that you held up, I remember hearing that when it came out and really digging it. So good stuff. My recommendation comes from a little bit of an unlikely source, just in the sense that I admit I've kind of always respected what the dude's done, just because he's sort of, always upset the Jesse Helms of the world. But Marilyn Manson's record that came out earlier this year, The Pale Emperor, don't dismiss it just because it's Marilyn Manson. This record is surprisingly really good. It's one of my favorites of the year. Obviously the year is pretty young still so far. His albums from, the 90s sort of, I don't know. I guess he sort of had a sound that was, I don't know, dark, for lack of a better term. and but he's always sort of had kind of a glam influence to him as well. And he's even got on this album a little bit even of kind of like a lounge act influence to him as well. And it's really catching a lot of people off guard because it kind of changes what you think about Marilyn Manson and his music. And while I've never really been into the guy's music, like I said earlier, I've always kind of, the guy's never bothered me. I always found the whole shtick kind of funny. But The Pale Emperor, check it out. It's really good. Some of the tracks are a little longer on it. Comes in at 10 tracks as well, so it's not it's concise number of tracks, but a lot of the tunes are over 5 minutes, 6 minutes. So check it out. I'd be curious to hear what both of you guys said about it. Just since none of us are like rabid Marilyn Manson fans.
Yeah, I would give it a listen with the idea that I never listened to his stuff before, other than what I heard in the background.
Yeah, it's definitely it's just a really pleasant surprise, and one from kind of one of the least likely of sources. So, cool. So check it out. So we got some good stuff there. Mark Ronson, Cults, and Marilyn Manson. We'll post links, videos to all of those artists as well at our website, rockchew.com. Again, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at RockN. That's letter N as in Nancy Chew. And you can also like our Facebook page where we keep the conversation going. If you do listen to us on iTunes, please give us a good review to sort of increase our iTunes clout. Helps us get some attention there. And we will continue this on all of those places that I just mentioned. Hope to see everybody again real soon for episode number 22. And 21. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. This was
22
21.
Is next.
22 is next.
22 is next.
I apologize.
We will get to 22. All right. So anyway, on that note, have a good night, fellas, and everybody out there, sleep tight and take care.